Ford, the company announcing that the chip shortage is now hitting two of its most productive and profitable plants.
Ford's executives buried the reports that could have saved 730 jobs. What you're about to see is the paper trail Ford hoped would never surface. Engineers had been sounding alarms, market research showed demand collapsing, and quality control flagged systematic failures, but they were all ignored. And now 730 Michigan workers are paying the price for decisions made in boardrooms they'd never see. Why were engineer reports buried while executives collected bonuses? What did Ford's leadership know, and when did they know it? And how does this shutdown connect to your car payments, electricity bills, and economic security? Keep watching. This is just the beginning. The numbers game. $5 billion. That's what Ford's electric dreams cost in 2024 alone. The financial reality behind the lightning shutdown painted a picture that went far beyond temporary production adjustments. Ford's Model E division, responsible for all electric vehicles, was hemorrhaging money at a rate that would have bankrupted smaller companies. Every Lightning that rolled off the Rouge assembly line was sold at a loss, with Ford subsidizing each purchase to maintain competitive pricing. Wall Street analysts had been tracking these losses for months, but the scale became undeniable during Ford's third-quarter earnings call. Chief Executive Officer Jim Farley admitted the company expected to lose $5 billion on electric vehicles in 2024. That represented more than the annual gross domestic product of some small nations, lost on a single product category. The Lightning's journey from promise to problem could be traced through its pricing evolution. When first announced, the base Pro model carried a price tag of $57,090. By 2024, Ford had slashed that to $49,875, a reduction of over $7,000 per vehicle. Meanwhile, dealers were receiving additional incentives of up to $1,500 for each Lightning they ordered from Ford's regional electric vehicle distribution centers. The company was essentially paying customers and dealers to take vehicles that were already being sold below cost. This wasn't sustainable economics. It was market share protection at any price. The financial hemorrhaging was just the beginning. The real crisis was building in places Ford never expected. Consumer rebellion. What happens when America's most trusted truck brand asks customers to pay luxury prices for an unfinished experiment? Lightning owners weren't staying silent about their experiences, and their voices were becoming increasingly difficult for Ford to ignore. Online forums that had begun as enthusiastic communities for early adopters were transforming into support groups for frustrated customers dealing with unexpected problems. The charging port door became a symbol of broader quality concerns. Owners reported having to press the door multiple times to get it to open, with some requiring complete replacement under warranty. The part alone cost over $300, and many dealers struggled with installation because they lacked experience servicing electric vehicles. These weren't isolated incidents. Lightning owners were sharing stories of water leaks, panel misalignments, and software glitches that required multiple dealer visits to resolve. For customers paying $50,000 or more for a truck, these problems felt unacceptable. Traditional F-Series owners expected decades of reliable service, but Lightning buyers were becoming unwilling beta testers. The emotional investment ran deeper than money. Many Lightning buyers considered themselves pioneers, supporting American manufacturing and environmental progress. They had waited years for Ford to deliver an electric truck and had defended the company through delays and price changes. Now they felt betrayed by quality issues that suggested Ford had rushed the Lightning to market before resolving fundamental problems. Customer complaints revealed a pattern Ford's engineers had been tracking for months, but management hadn't been listening. The competition awakens. While Ford's assembly lines fell silent, rival factories were running overtime to capture what Detroit was abandoning. General Motors executives weren't hiding their satisfaction with Ford's struggles. GM's electric vehicle sales had surpassed Ford's for the first time in the third quarter of 2024, with 70,450 units sold compared to Ford's 67,689. The Chevrolet Silverado electric vehicle and GMC Sierra electric vehicle were gaining market share, while Ford dealt with production halts and quality issues. The timing couldn't have been worse for Ford. Tesla's Cybertruck, despite its own controversial design and production challenges, had captured third place among all electric vehicle sales in the United States during the third quarter. With 16,692 units sold, the Cybertruck was outselling the Lightning by more than 2 to 1. Tesla had achieved in months what Ford had struggled to maintain over years. Rivian was expanding production capacity and distribution networks, while Ford wrestled with shutdown logistics. The R1T pickup truck was finding customers among outdoor enthusiasts who valued its off-road capabilities and software integration. Rivian's partnership with Amazon provided financial stability that allowed for patient market development, contrasting sharply with Ford's pressure to achieve immediate profitability. The automotive press was also changing its narrative about electric truck leadership. Publications that had once positioned the Lightning as the obvious choice for traditional truck buyers were now presenting it as one option among many increasingly attractive alternatives. The pause that Ford called strategic was becoming a permanent advantage for everyone else. We just spent months digging through financial reports, production data, and competitive analysis to show you exactly how Ford handed China the keys to America's truck market. You now have the inside story that most people will never see. If that research saved you hours of confusion about what's really happening in the EV space, hit subscribe. It helps us keep investigating the stories that matter. Boardroom calculations. The decision to shut down production wasn't made in Michigan. It was calculated in spreadsheets that treated workers as variables. Executive conference rooms at Ford's headquarters in Dearborn became pressure cookers during the weeks leading up to the shutdown announcement. Board members who had initially celebrated the Lightning as Ford's electric vehicle breakthrough were now demanding explanations for mounting losses and disappointing sales figures. The conversations weren't about automotive innovation anymore. They were about financial survival. Chief Financial Officer John Lawler presented data that painted a stark picture. Every Lightning sold represented a loss of several $1,000s, even after accounting for federal tax credits and Ford's aggressive pricing strategies. The math was simple but brutal. Continuing production meant accelerating financial hemorrhaging, while pausing production might preserve capital for strategic repositioning. The human cost calculations were equally cold. 730 hourly workers represented approximately $45 million in annual wages and benefits. Temporary layoffs would reduce those costs while maintaining the option to restart production when market conditions improved. From a purely financial perspective, the decision was obvious. Board discussions revealed deeper tensions about Ford's electric vehicle strategy. Some members argued that the Lightning's problems represented temporary growing pains that could be resolved with continued investment and refinement. Others questioned whether Ford had fundamentally misunderstood the electric truck market and should redirect resources toward more profitable opportunities. While executives debated quarterly projections, engineers on the ground were seeing something completely different. Engineering warnings. The technical problems weren't surprises. They were documented concerns that procurement decisions had ignored. Deep within Ford's engineering documentation, a paper trail revealed months of warnings about Lightning production challenges that had been overruled by cost-cutting initiatives and schedule pressures. Engineers had identified potential quality issues during development phases, but their recommendations for additional testing and component upgrades had been rejected as too expensive or time-consuming. Battery thermal management systems had shown inconsistent performance during extreme weather testing, but engineers were told to optimize for typical conditions rather than edge cases. This decision would later contribute to customer complaints about reduced range and charging performance in cold climates. The engineering team had proposed enhanced thermal controls, but procurement had selected lower-cost alternatives. Software integration challenges were particularly frustrating for engineering teams who understood the complexity of modern vehicle systems. The Lightning's touchscreen interface controlled functions that had traditionally been managed by physical controls, requiring sophisticated software that could handle multiple simultaneous inputs without delay or failure. Engineers had requested additional development time for comprehensive testing, but marketing pressures demanded immediate availability. Quality control engineers had documented concerning patterns in early production units that suggested fundamental process problems rather than random defects. Panel alignment issues, electrical connection problems, and software glitches appeared with statistical regularity that indicated systematic rather than isolated causes. The engineering reports contained a timeline that would change everything Ford thought it knew about readiness. Supply chain secrets. How does a company that built millions of trucks suddenly struggle to source components for thousands? The Lightning supply chain challenges revealed fundamental differences between traditional automotive manufacturing and electric vehicle production that Ford had underestimated during development planning. Components that seemed similar to traditional truck parts required entirely different sourcing strategies, quality standards, and supplier relationships. Battery cell production represented the most critical supply chain bottleneck. Ford's partnership with SK Innovation for domestic battery manufacturing was strategic for reducing dependence on international suppliers, but the Georgia facility struggled to achieve consistent quality and volume targets. Cell chemistry variations affected range and charging performance, creating customer satisfaction issues that rippled back through the entire supply chain. Semiconductor requirements for electric vehicles exceeded traditional automotive applications by significant margins. The Lightning's sophisticated electronics required specialized chips that competed for manufacturing capacity with consumer electronics and industrial applications. Global semiconductor shortages affected Ford disproportionately because electric vehicle chips were lower volume and higher complexity than traditional automotive semiconductors. High-voltage electrical components demanded safety standards and testing protocols that exceeded traditional automotive requirements. Suppliers needed specialized facilities and certification processes that increased costs and extended lead times. Some traditional Ford suppliers couldn't meet these requirements and had to be replaced with more expensive alternatives. The supply chain revelations exposed weaknesses that went far beyond the Lightning. Market research reality. Ford's consumer research had been telling them for months that demand was softening, but production quotas ignored the data. Market research teams at Ford had been tracking concerning trends in consumer sentiment about electric vehicles throughout 2024, but their findings were being overshadowed by production targets and competitive pressures. The data painted a clear picture of slowing adoption rates and shifting customer priorities that contradicted optimistic sales forecasts. Consumer surveys revealed that early adopter enthusiasm was being replaced by mainstream buyer skepticism. Customers who had been eager to try electric vehicles were encountering real-world limitations that differed from marketing promises. Charging infrastructure availability, range anxiety during extreme weather, and higher than expected ownership costs were creating negative word of mouth that affected potential buyer interest. Price sensitivity research showed that Lightning customers were extremely responsive to cost changes, suggesting that demand was more elastic than traditional truck buyers. When Ford reduced Lightning prices, sales increased, but when incentives decreased, buyer interest dropped significantly. This pattern indicated that Lightning buyers were primarily motivated by value rather than brand loyalty or environmental concerns. Demographic analysis revealed that Lightning buyers were concentrated in higher income brackets and specific geographic regions, limiting the potential market size. Unlike traditional F-Series trucks, which appealed to diverse customer segments, the Lightning attracted a narrower demographic that was approaching saturation. The research painted a clear picture, but across the country, dealers were living a different reality. Dealer dilemmas. Dealerships that invested millions in Lightning infrastructure were left with expensive charging stations and empty lots. Family-owned Ford dealerships across America were facing their most challenging business environment in decades. Dealers who had committed substantial capital to electric vehicle infrastructure, installing high-speed charging stations, training service technicians, and redesigning showrooms, were now questioning whether their investments would ever generate returns. The charging infrastructure represented the most visible symbol of these challenges. Each dealership had invested between $50,000 and $200,000 in charging equipment, electrical upgrades, and installation costs. These stations were designed to demonstrate Lightning capabilities and support customer service needs, but with production halted, they sat largely unused while monthly lease payments and maintenance costs continued. Service department investments were equally problematic. Technicians had undergone specialized training for high-voltage systems, electric motor diagnostics, and battery management systems. This training cost thousands of dollars per technician and required ongoing certification maintenance. With fewer Lightning vehicles in service and limited warranty work, these investments weren't generating expected returns. Inventory financing created additional pressure for dealers who had Lightning trucks on their lots when the shutdown was announced. Each vehicle represented significant capital tied up in slowly moving inventory. Traditional F-Series trucks typically sold within 60 days. but Lightning inventory was approaching 112 days on average. Dealer feedback revealed something Ford's corporate surveys had missed entirely: Michigan's manufacturing crossroads. When automotive jobs disappear, what happens to the communities built around them? Dearborn and surrounding communities had built their economic foundations on automotive manufacturing for over a century. The lightning shutdown represented more than temporary job loss. It symbolized uncertainty about the future of American automotive manufacturing and the communities that depended on it. Local businesses immediately felt the impact of reduced worker spending. Restaurants near the Rouge plant that relied on shift change customers saw declining revenues. Gas stations, grocery stores, and retail establishments that served automotive workers were reporting decreased sales. The economic multiplier effect meant that each automotive job supported approximately 3 additional service jobs in the local economy. Housing markets and automotive communities were becoming increasingly volatile. Workers facing layoffs were reconsidering major purchases like homes, while existing homeowners worried about property values if automotive employment continued declining. Real estate agents reported that potential buyers were asking specific questions about local employment stability before making offers. Educational institutions were grappling with changing skill requirements for automotive careers. Community colleges and technical schools had developed programs specifically for electric vehicle manufacturing, but uncertain demand made enrollment planning difficult. Students were questioning whether to pursue automotive careers or seek opportunities in more stable industries. Municipal budgets depended heavily on property taxes from automotive facilities and income taxes from automotive workers. Reduced economic activity threatened funding for schools, infrastructure maintenance, and public services. Michigan's struggle was becoming a template for manufacturing communities nationwide. Union response. The United Auto Workers had negotiated job security provisions, but nobody anticipated voluntary production shutdowns. United Auto Workers Local 594, representing Rouge Electric Vehicle Center workers, found themselves navigating uncharted territory. Traditional collective bargaining agreements included protections against layoffs due to economic downturns or company financial difficulties, but voluntary production shutdowns for market positioning created legal and strategic challenges that existing contracts hadn't anticipated. Union leadership was balancing competing priorities, supporting members affected by the shutdown while maintaining productive relationships with Ford management for long-term job security. The Lightning program represented the future of automotive manufacturing, and union leaders understood that opposing electric vehicle development could jeopardize their members' long-term employment prospects. Grievance procedures designed for traditional labor disputes weren't well suited for addressing production shutdowns based on market conditions rather than contract violations. Union representatives were exploring whether Ford's decision violated the spirit of job security provisions, even if it didn't technically breach contract language. Member meetings revealed diverse opinions about the shutdown and union response strategies. Some workers viewed the pause as a necessary business decision that would ultimately protect their jobs by ensuring Lightning viability. Others saw it as management failure that unfairly penalized workers for executive mistakes. These divisions complicated union decision-making about potential responses. Supplemental unemployment benefits negotiated in previous contracts provided financial support for laid-off workers, but these benefits weren't designed for extended shutdowns. Union halls were becoming strategy centers for battles that extended far beyond Ford. Political ramifications. The Lightning shutdown became ammunition in political debates about American manufacturing and energy policy. Congressional representatives from Michigan immediately understood the political implications of Ford's decision. The Lightning had been showcased as proof that American manufacturers could lead global electric vehicle development, and its struggles were being interpreted as evidence of policy failures or insufficient government support for domestic manufacturing. Federal electric vehicle incentives came under renewed scrutiny as critics questioned whether taxpayer money was effectively supporting American jobs and manufacturing. The Lightning shutdown provided ammunition for politicians who opposed electric vehicle subsidies, arguing that government intervention was distorting markets rather than creating sustainable economic benefits. Energy policy debates were affected by Lightning production challenges because electric vehicles were central to federal climate change strategies. Politicians who supported aggressive emissions reduction targets found themselves defending policies that seemed to be struggling with practical implementation. The Lightning's problems suggested that electric vehicle adoption might be more difficult than policy projections assumed. Trade policy discussions incorporated Lightning challenges as evidence for different approaches to international competition. Some politicians argued that American manufacturers needed protection from foreign competition to develop electric vehicle capabilities, while others claimed that protection would reduce competitive pressure needed to drive innovation and efficiency. State economic development strategies were being reconsidered in light of automotive industry volatility. States that had offered incentives to attract electric vehicle manufacturing were questioning whether these investments would generate promised returns. The political implications were spreading to policy decisions that would reshape entire industries. Global manufacturing shift. While Ford paused, Chinese manufacturers were scaling production to capture the American market. Ford was temporarily abandoning. BYD, the Chinese automotive giant, was watching Ford's Lightning struggles with strategic interest. Company executives understood that temporary market disruptions created permanent opportunities for global competitors who could maintain consistent production and quality standards. While Ford dealt with shutdown logistics, BYD was accelerating development of pickup trucks, specifically designed for North American markets. The Shark VHEV pickup truck represented BYD's first direct challenge to American truck manufacturers. Unlike Ford's approach of adapting existing truck platforms for electric power, BYD was designing vehicles from the ground up for electric and hybrid powertrains. This fundamental difference in engineering philosophy was creating vehicles that avoided many of the compromises affecting the Lightning. Manufacturing capacity allocation was shifting globally as Chinese companies invested in production capabilities that could serve American markets. While Ford idled Lightning production, Chinese manufacturers were building facilities in Mexico that could export vehicles to the United States under existing trade agreements. This geographical strategy would allow Chinese companies to compete directly with American manufacturers while avoiding some trade restrictions. Technology development timelines were accelerating as international competitors recognized opportunities to capture market share from struggling American manufacturers. European automakers were also advancing their electric truck development programs, viewing Ford's production halt as validation that American manufacturers weren't as far ahead in electric vehicle development as previously assumed. The global response revealed how temporary American decisions were creating permanent strategic disadvantages. Innovation under pressure. How does a company restart innovation after admitting its flagship product needs fundamental redesign? Ford's engineering teams were experiencing the intense pressure of rebuilding credibility while maintaining production timelines that still seemed unrealistic. The shutdown provided time for addressing known problems, but it also created expectations for dramatic improvements that might not be achievable within the available timeframe. Advanced battery technology development became a critical focus area as Ford sought to differentiate future Lightning models from current versions that customers found disappointing. Partnerships with battery manufacturers were being expanded to access newer cell chemistry that could provide better range, faster charging, and improved cold weather performance. However, these improvements required extensive testing that could delay production restart beyond January. Software integration challenges were receiving unprecedented attention from Ford's engineering leadership. The Lightning's touchscreen controlled systems had created customer frustration that traditional automotive companies weren't accustomed to managing. Software development teams were being expanded, and new partnerships with technology companies were being explored to accelerate capability development. Manufacturing process innovations were being implemented to address quality control issues that had affected customer satisfaction. The Rouge Electric Vehicle Center was receiving equipment upgrades and process modifications designed to improve build quality and reduce the variability that had led to customer complaints. However, these changes required worker retraining and process validation that consumed time and resources. The pressure to innovate was creating opportunities for breakthrough solutions or spectacular failures. Consumer evolution. American buyers weren't just changing their minds about electric trucks. They were redefining what they expected from automotive manufacturers. Traditional automotive purchasing patterns were being disrupted by electric vehicle buyers who approached vehicle selection with different priorities and decision-making processes. Lightning customers had demonstrated that electric vehicle buyers were more price-sensitive, more technically knowledgeable, and more willing to switch brands than traditional truck buyers. Information gathering behaviors among potential electric vehicle buyers had evolved to include sources that traditional automotive marketing didn't reach effectively. Online forums, social media groups, and peer recommendations carried more influence than traditional advertising or dealer presentations. Ford was discovering that electric vehicle buyers conducted more research and were more skeptical of manufacturer claims. Customer service expectations were higher for electric vehicles because buyers viewed them as premium technology products rather than traditional automotive purchases. Lightning owners expected software updates, technical support, and problem resolution process similar to technology products rather than traditional automotive service experiences. This shift required Ford to develop new customer service capabilities. Value perception among electric vehicle buyers emphasized total cost of ownership calculations that included fuel savings, maintenance costs, and resale values in ways that traditional automotive buyers typically didn't consider. Lightning buyers were sophisticated financial analysts who evaluated electric vehicles using complex calculations that traditional automotive marketing didn't address effectively. Consumer voices were driving changes that would reshape how vehicles were designed, marketed, and sold. The road forward, the 7-week shutdown that began as a production pause, was becoming a fundamental reset of American electric vehicle strategy. Industry transformation was accelerating as Ford's struggles highlighted broader challenges facing traditional automotive manufacturers transitioning to electric vehicles. The lightning shutdown represented more than one company's production problem. It symbolized the difficulty of adapting century-old manufacturing systems to 21st century technology requirements. Strategic repositioning efforts across the automotive industry were being influenced by lessons learned from Ford's Lightning experience. Other manufacturers were revising their electric vehicle timelines, quality standards, and market entry strategies based on observing Ford's challenges. The industry was collectively acknowledging that electric vehicle development was more complex than initially anticipated. Policy implications at federal and state levels were being reconsidered as government officials recognized that electric vehicle adoption might require different support strategies than originally planned. The lightning shutdown was prompting discussions about whether existing incentive programs were adequately structured to support successful electric vehicle manufacturing and adoption. Investment priorities were shifting as financial markets reassessed which companies and technologies were most likely to succeed in electric vehicle markets. Ford's struggles were causing investors to demand more rigorous due diligence about electric vehicle business plans and more conservative timelines for achieving profitability. Technology development paths were being reconsidered across the industry as companies learned from Ford's experience about the importance of integrating software, hardware, and manufacturing capabilities effectively. The Lightning's problems demonstrated that electric vehicles required different development approaches than traditional automotive products. The choices made in these crucial months would determine whether American electric vehicles led the global market or followed from behind. So what do you think? Can Ford recover from this disaster? Or is American electric vehicle leadership already lost to China? Will other automakers learn from Ford's mistakes? Or are we watching the beginning of the end for Detroit? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if this investigation opened your eyes. And thank you for watching.